The Knights Templar is one of history's most intriguing and enigmatic organizations. This medieval order of warrior monks captured the imagination of people throughout Europe during the 12th and 13th centuries, and their legacy continues to fascinate us to this day. At the heart of the Knights Templar story is the idea of the Crusade, a holy war launched by Christians in the Middle Ages to reclaim the Holy Land from the Muslim forces that had conquered it. The Knights Templar was founded in Jerusalem in the early 12th century, during the aftermath of the First Crusade. Their mission was to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem and to defend the city from its enemies. Over the centuries, the Knights Templar became one of Europe's most powerful and influential organizations. They amassed vast wealth and land holdings, and their membership included some of the most prominent figures of the day. However, their power and influence also made them enemies, and the Pope eventually disbanded them in the early 14th century. Despite their relatively short existence, the Knights Templar left a lasting legacy, and their story has been shrouded in myth and legend for centuries. There are stories of their secret journeys and hidden treasures, their connection to the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant, and their alleged involvement in secret societies and the occult. In this in-depth documentary, we will explore the history of the Knights Templar, from their origins in Jerusalem to their most famous battles and campaigns, as well as the myths and legends that have grown up around them over the centuries. We will delve into the secret rituals and beliefs of the order and examine the evidence for their involvement in arcane and esoteric practices. The First Crusade, launched in 1096, was a Christian military campaign to capture Jerusalem from the Muslim Seljuk Turks. After several years of fighting, the Crusaders captured the city in 1099. However, the situation in Jerusalem was far from stable, and the surrounding Muslim forces constantly threatened the Christian presence in the city. In this context, the idea of a new religious order of knights was born. The founder of the Knights Templar was a French nobleman named Hugues de Payens. According to legend, de Payens and 8 other knights went to the Holy Land in 1119 to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. They formed a brotherhood and took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, dedicating themselves to protecting Christian pilgrims and defending the Holy Land. They lived in poverty and observed strict religious discipline, wearing simple white tunics with a red cross on the chest. The Catholic Church officially recognized the order in 1129, when it was given the protection of the Pope and granted exemption from all secular authority. The Knights Templar quickly became one of the most influential and wealthy organizations in medieval Europe, with a vast network of properties and estates across the continent. The origin of the Knights Templar is closely linked to the idea of the Holy War or Crusade. As the historian Malcolm Barber notes, the idea of a religious order of knights was not new, but it had never been put to use in the context of a holy war. The Knights Templar were not simply a group of knights who banded together for mutual protection. They were part of a more significant religious movement that saw the Crusades as a divine mission to retake the Holy Land from the Muslims. The order was also closely tied to the political interests of the time. As the historian Dan Jones notes, the Crusades were as much about politics as they were about religion. The Knights Templar were supported by many of the most powerful rulers of the day, including King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, who gave them a headquarters in the former Temple of Solomon, and King Henry II of England, who granted them extensive lands and privileges. Some believe legends suggest that the Knights Templar had ancient origins and secret knowledge that they guarded and passed down through the ages. These theories often involve the idea that the Knights Templar were connected to the legendary Order of the Knights of the Round Table, or that they were descended from ancient Egyptian or Sumerian societies. The origin of the Knights Templar is shrouded in mystery and legend, and much of what we know about the early years of the order is based on later accounts and documents. However, what is clear is that order played a significant role in the history of the Crusades and in the development of medieval Europe. As the historian Jonathan Riley Smith notes, the Knights Templar were not only an important military force in the Crusades, but also a major economic and political power in medieval Europe. The rise of the Knights Templar was a remarkable phenomenon in medieval Europe. This military religious order of knights began as a small group of dedicated warriors committed to protecting the Holy Land and protecting Christian pilgrims. At the heart of the Knights Templars' rise was their connection to the Crusades, the series of holy wars that were fought between Christian and Muslim forces for control of the Holy Land. The Crusades provided the context for the Knights Templars' existence and were instrumental in many of the most important battles and campaigns of the period. The Knights Templars' rise to power was closely tied to their connections with the powerful ruling classes of Europe. The order's leadership was made up of members of the aristocracy, and they were able to forge strong alliances with kings and nobles across Europe. These alliances allowed the Knights Templar to amass vast wealth and land holdings, giving them enormous power and influence. One of the critical factors in the Knights Templars' rise was their reputation as fearsome and dedicated warriors. The order was founded as a military organization, and its members were highly skilled fighters, trained in the arts of war from a young age. They were renowned for their bravery and unwavering commitment to their cause, and their reputation as skilled and dedicated fighters only grew as the order's power and influence expanded. Another factor that contributed to the Knights Templars' rise was their strict religious discipline. The order's members took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and were expected to live according to strict codes of conduct. This spiritual discipline gave the Knights Templar a respected moral authority across Europe, and it helped solidify the order's position as a respected and influential organization. Perhaps the most crucial factor in the Knights Templars' rise to power was their vast network of connections and alliances. The order had strong ties to the ruling classes of Europe, and they could leverage these connections to their advantage in many ways. They were able to secure land grants and other privileges from kings and nobles, and they were able to use their influence to secure loans and additional financial support when they needed it. However, the Knights Templars' rise to power was not without its challenges and setbacks. The order faced opposition from some quarters, and they were often viewed with suspicion by those who saw them as a threat to their power and influence. Additionally, the Crusades were a challenging and often brutal series of conflicts that took a heavy toll on everyone involved. Despite these challenges, the Knights Templar continued to grow and expand. They became one of the most powerful and influential organizations in Europe, and they played a crucial role in many of the most important events of the period. Their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate us to this day, and their story is a testament to the power of faith, dedication, and perseverance in the face of adversity. The Knights Templar was one of the wealthiest and most influential organizations in medieval Europe, and their rise to power was closely tied to their vast wealth and land holdings. During the height of their success, the Knights Templar controlled vast estates and properties across Europe. They had access to enormous financial resources, allowing them to wield significant influence and power. One of the primary sources of the Knights Templars' wealth was their involvement in banking and finance. The order had a sophisticated system of financial management that allowed them to lend money to kings, nobles, and other influential figures across Europe. They could charge high interest rates on these loans, which generated enormous profits for the order. The Knights Templar also had access to significant amounts of wealth through their land holdings. They controlled vast estates and properties across Europe, including many of the continent's most valuable and productive lands. They could generate significant amounts of income from these properties, which helped fund their military campaigns and other activities. Perhaps the most valuable asset that the Knights Templar possessed, however, was their reputation. The order was widely respected and admired for its bravery, dedication, and commitment to its cause. This reputation allowed them to secure the support and allegiance of powerful figures across Europe, and it helped to ensure that they could access the resources and support they needed to carry out their activities. The Knights Templar's power and wealth allowed them to wield significant influence over medieval Europe's political and social landscape. They were able to influence the policies and decisions of kings and nobles, and they were able to play a significant role in many of the most important events of the period. Many bankers who were members of the Knights Templar were highly skilled and experienced financial experts. They developed innovative financial instruments and systems that allowed the order to generate significant amounts of income and manage their resources effectively. One of the key innovations that the Knights Templar introduced to the world of finance was the concept of the letter of credit. This financial instrument allowed merchants and traders to conduct business long distances without carrying large amounts of cash or other valuables. Instead, a merchant could obtain a letter of credit from the Knights Templar, which would guarantee payment to their trading partners in other parts of Europe. The Knights Templar were also involved in foreign exchange and currency trading, which allowed them to profit from fluctuations in exchange rates. They were able to leverage their vast resources and connections to secure the best exchange rates, and they were able to generate significant profits from these activities. The banking activities of the Knights Templar were closely tied to their role as a military order. The order relied on significant financial resources to fund its campaigns and support its activities. Without the ability to generate substantial income through banking and finance, the Knights Templars would not have been able to sustain themselves for as long as they did. The Knights Templars' banking activities helped solidify its reputation as a powerful and influential organization. Their involvement in banking allowed them to influence the policies and decisions of kings and nobles. This influence helped further to increase the wealth and power of the order, and it helped to ensure that they remained a significant force in European politics and society for many years. One of the most prominent and well-known members of the order was Hughes de Payens, the founder of the Knights Templar. Hughes de Payens was a skilled financial manager who played a vital role in the order's banking activities from the outset. He was responsible for managing the order's finances and investments, and oversaw the development of the order's sophisticated financial management system. André de Montbard was another prominent member of the Knights Templar who played a significant role in the order's financial activities. De Montbard was a highly influential member of the order who served as its spiritual leader for many years. He was also a skilled financial expert who helped develop the order's banking and economic systems, including the letter of credit, which allowed merchants and traders to conduct business across great distances without needing cash or other valuables. William of Beaujeu, who served as the Grand Master of the Knights Templar from 1273 to 1291, was another skilled banker who oversaw the order's vast financial holdings and resources. During his time as Grand Master, William of Beaujeu led the development of the order's banking activities. He helped to ensure that the order had the financial resources it needed to carry out its military campaigns and other activities. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was a skilled financial manager who oversaw the order's banking activities during significant economic and political upheaval. During this time, the order faced increasing pressure from its enemies and saw its influence and power decline. Despite these challenges, Jacques de Molay managed the Order's financial resources and activities, ensuring it remained financially stable and could carry out its mission. The religion of the Knights Templar was deeply rooted in the Christian faith. As a military religious order, the Knights Templar saw themselves as defenders of the faith, and a strong sense of religious devotion and commitment drove their activities. At the heart of the Knights Templars' religious beliefs was a strong belief in the power of God. The order saw God as the ultimate authority, and they believed their mission was to carry out His will on earth. They were committed to living according to the teachings of Christ, and they saw themselves as living embodiments of His message. One of the critical aspects of the Knights Templars' religious beliefs was their devotion to the Virgin Mary. The order had a particular commitment to Mary, and they saw her as a powerful and influential figure who could intercede on their behalf with God. They believed that Mary played a key role in their success and that she was always watching over them. In addition to their devotion to God and Mary, the Knights Templar also had a deep respect for the teachings of the Bible. They saw the Bible as a source of wisdom and guidance and were committed to living according to its teachings. The order also had a strong tradition of prayer and meditation. Their members were expected to spend significant amounts of time praying and contemplating each day. While the Knights Templar were deeply committed to their Christian faith, they also had a degree of openness and tolerance towards other religious traditions. They were known to have close relationships with Muslim and Jewish communities in the Holy Land, and were often seen as a bridge between different religious groups. Despite their openness to other religious traditions, the Knights Templar was ultimately a Christian organization. They saw themselves as defenders of the faith and were committed to protecting Christian pilgrims and holy sites from attack. Their religious devotion was a key factor in their success, and it helped to inspire and motivate their members throughout their many campaigns and battles. The doctrine and codes of the Knights Templar were essential to the functioning of the order, and they helped to ensure that its members remained true to its ideals and mission. The order had a set of strict rules and codes that its members were expected to follow, which helped regulate their behavior and ensure that they acted in accordance with the order's principles. One of the main aspects of the Knights Templars' doctrine was their commitment to the ideals of chivalry. They were committed to living according to the principles of chivalry, which emphasized honor, courage, and loyalty. Another critical aspect of the Knights Templars' doctrine was their commitment to poverty. The order had a strict policy of renouncing wealth and possessions, and its members were expected to live a life of simplicity and austerity. The Knights Templar also had a set of strict rules and codes that governed their behavior and activities. These codes included rules about how members were expected to dress, how they were expected to behave in public, and how they were expected to conduct themselves in battle. One of the most important rules of the order was their commitment to secrecy. The Knights Templar were known for their secrecy and discretion, and they were expected to keep the order's activities and secrets hidden from the outside world. Another critical aspect of the Knights Templars' codes was their commitment to obedience. Members were expected to follow the orders of their superiors without question, and disobedience was considered a grave offense. The Knights Templars' doctrine and codes were essential to the functioning of the order, and they helped to ensure that its members remained true to its ideals and mission. Their commitment to chivalry, poverty, secrecy, and obedience helped to shape the order's identity and culture, and it helped to ensure that its members remained committed to the order's mission for many years. The secret rituals of the Knights Templar have been the subject of much speculation and debate over the years. While much of what we know about these rituals is based on speculation and rumors, a few eyewitness accounts and historical records shed some light on this mysterious aspect of the order. One of the most well-known accounts of the Knights Templar's secret rituals comes from a French knight named Geoffroy de Charny. De Charny was a member of the order who was burned at the stake alongside Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, in 1314. Before his execution, de Charny gave his confessor a detailed account of the order's rituals, which was later recorded in the Chinon parchment. According to de Charny, the Knights Templar engaged in several secret rituals, including initiation ceremonies, in which new members were initiated into the order's secrets and mysteries. These ceremonies involved several symbolic gestures and practices, and they were designed to impress upon new members the seriousness of their commitment to the order. Geoffroy de Charny's account provides insight into the Knights Templar's initiation ceremonies, a central aspect of the order's secret rituals. According to de Charny, the initiation ceremonies were elaborate and highly symbolic, and they were designed to impress upon new members the seriousness of their commitment to the order. The initiation ceremonies began with fasting and prayer, during which the new members were expected to prepare themselves mentally and spiritually for their initiation. Once the fasting period was over, the new members were brought before the order's leaders for the initiation ceremony. The ceremony itself was highly symbolic and involved a number of rituals and gestures. The new members were required to take a solemn oath of allegiance to the order. Symbolic gestures and rituals initiated them into the order's secrets and mysteries. One of the most important aspects of the initiation ceremony was the symbolic renunciation of worldly goods and possessions. The new members were required to renounce all their material possessions and declare themselves utterly devoted to the order and its mission. Another critical aspect of the initiation ceremony was symbolic clothing and regalia. The new members were given special robes and other garments imbued with symbolic meaning and designed to signify their new status as members of the order. Overall, the initiation ceremony was designed to impress upon new members the seriousness of their commitment to the order and its mission. Through symbolic gestures and rituals, the new members were initiated into the order's secrets and mysteries, and were required to pledge their complete allegiance to the order and its leaders. While much of what we know about the Knights Templar's initiation ceremonies is based on speculation and rumors, de Charny's account provides valuable insights into this vital aspect of the order's secret rituals. The initiation ceremony was a highly symbolic and meaningful event, and it played a central role in the Knights Templar's culture and identity. Another aspect of the Knights Templar's secret rituals was their use of relics and sacred objects. The order was known to possess many holy relics, including fragments of the True Cross and other religious artifacts. These relics were considered to be highly sacred, and they were used in a number of the order's secret rituals. In addition to using relics and sacred objects, the Knights Templar was known to engage in several symbolic rituals and gestures. One of the most well-known of these was the order's symbol, the double-headed eagle. This symbol was used in several of the order's rituals, and was considered a powerful symbol of the order's strength and power. The double-headed eagle was a powerful symbol of the Knights Templar, and played an essential role in the order's secret rituals and ceremonies. The symbol's origins are somewhat mysterious, but it is believed to have been adopted by the order from the Byzantine Empire, where it was used as a symbol of imperial power. According to some historians, the double-headed eagle may have had esoteric meaning for the Knights Templar. The eagle's two heads represent the duality of nature and the spiritual realm, and the symbol as a whole is seen as a representation of the union of heaven and earth. In addition to its esoteric meaning, the double-headed eagle had practical significance for the Knights Templar. It was used as a symbol of the order's strength and power, and was often displayed on their banners and shields as a sign of their military prowess. The symbol was also used in the order's secret rituals and ceremonies, where it was imbued with a more profound spiritual significance. The double-headed eagle has remained an important symbol in the centuries since the Knights Templar's demise. Several other organizations and institutions have adopted it, which continues to be seen as a powerful symbol of strength, power, and spiritual union. Many modern-day esoteric traditions have also explored its esoteric meaning, where it is seen as a symbol of the soul's journey towards spiritual enlightenment and union with the divine. There has been a long-standing association between the Knights Templar and Freemasonry, with many scholars and historians arguing that the two organizations are closely linked. While the exact nature of this connection is a matter of some debate, evidence suggests that the Knights Templar played a role in the development of Freemasonry, and that many Freemasons continue to honor the legacy of the Knights Templar. Evidence linking the Knights Templar to Freemasonry is that there is a branch of Freemasonry known as the Knights Templar. This branch of Freemasonry traces its lineage back to the Knights Templar, including many of the same symbols and rituals used by the order. According to some historians, the Knights Templar branch of Freemasonry may have originated as a way for former members to continue their work in a new context. More evidence linking the Knights Templar to Freemasonry is that many of the leading figures in the early days of Freemasonry were also members of the Knights Templar. For example, some historians argue that the legendary Scottish Mason, William Sinclair, was a Knights Templar member, and that he brought many of the order's teachings and traditions into the early Freemasonic lodges. First-hand accounts also suggest a close connection between the Knights Templar and Freemasonry. For example, in the early 18th century, the historian Bernard de Montfaucon visited a Masonic lodge in Paris and observed a ceremony where the members wore Templar-style robes and used a Templar sword. According to de Montfaucon, the members of the lodge claimed to be descended from the Knights Templar and to be carrying on their legacy in a new form. Another interesting relationship was between the Knights Templar and the papacy. It was complex and evolved throughout the order's history. At the beginning of their relationship, the papacy supported and encouraged the Knights Templars. Pope Innocent II, for example, granted the order its first papal bull in 1139, which exempted it from all forms of taxation and gave it special privileges and immunities. Historian Malcolm Barber said, "The papacy was initially a strong supporter of the Knights Templar, recognizing their military and financial contributions to the Crusades. However, as the power and influence of the Knights Templar grew, their relationship with the papacy became more complex. In 1291, the fall of Acre marked the end of the Crusaders' presence in the Holy Land, and the Knights Templar were forced to retreat to their European holdings. As a result, they became more involved in European politics, and their wealth and influence made them increasingly important players in the Church's affairs. This increasing involvement in European politics put the Knights Templar at odds with the papacy, which saw the order as a potential rival. This tension came to a head in the early 14th century when King Philip IV of France began to target the order and accused its members of heresy and other crimes. The papacy initially hesitated to act against the Knights Templar, but eventually gave in to pressure from Philip IV and ordered an investigation. The investigation ultimately led to the downfall of the Knights Templar, as the papacy disbanded the order in 1312. While the papacy initially supported the order, it eventually saw the Knights Templar as threatening its power and authority. Despite this contentious relationship, the legacy of the Knights Templar has endured, and their influence on the Church and European history cannot be denied. According to historian Karen Rawls, the Knights Templar were a complex organization that had a profound impact on the history of Europe and the Church. Their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world, and their story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of power and influence. In the end, the relationship between the Knights Templar and the papacy was complex, marked by both support and tension. While the papacy ultimately disbanded the order, its legacy and influence continue to be felt today. The head of Baphomet has long been associated with the Knights Templar, with some historians and scholars arguing that the order worshipped the head as part of their secret rituals and ceremonies. While much of what we know about the Knights Templars' use of the head of Baphomet is based on speculation and rumor, there are a few eyewitness accounts and historical records that shed some light on this mysterious aspect of the order. One of the most well-known accounts of the Knights Templars' use of the head of Baphomet comes from the trial of the order's leaders in the early 14th century. According to the charges against the order, the Knights Templar were accused of worshipping a mysterious idol known as the head of Baphomet. This idol was said to represent a demonic deity and was used in the order's secret rituals and ceremonies. While some historians have dismissed the charges against the Knights Templar as nothing more than propaganda, others argue that evidence suggests that the order used the head of Baphomet in some of their rituals. Eyewitness accounts also suggest a connection between the Knights Templar and the head of Baphomet. For example, in the 18th century, the French occultist Eliphas Lévy created a drawing of the head of Baphomet, which he claimed was based on a description of the idol he had received from an unnamed source. According to Lévy, the head of Baphomet symbolized the union of opposites, representing both the light and the darkness, the masculine and the feminine. Despite the controversy surrounding the Knights Templars' use of the head of Baphomet, the symbol has continued to be a powerful and enduring image in occultism and esotericism. It has been adopted by several modern-day esoteric traditions, where it is seen as a symbol of spiritual transformation and the union of opposites. Overall, the connection between the Knights Templar and the head of Baphomet remains a topic of debate and speculation today. At the same time, a few historical records and eyewitness accounts shed some light on this mysterious aspect of the order. Much of what we know is based on rumor and conjecture. The head of Baphomet remains a powerful symbol of the Knights Templars' legacy, and it continues to fascinate and intrigue people worldwide. Throughout their history, the Knights Templar had a complex relationship with the kings and rulers of the time. While some kings saw the order as a valuable ally and supporter, others viewed it with suspicion and hostility, and in some cases even sought to destroy it. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem was one of the earliest examples of a king who had a positive relationship with the Knights Templar. Historian Malcolm Barber said Baldwin was well disposed towards the Templars and granted them a site on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This site would become the order's headquarters and a symbol of its regional power and influence. Another king who supported the Knights Templar was King Louis VII of France. Historian Karen Rawls said Louis VII had great respect for the Templars and often sought their advice on matters of state. Louis VII also donated significantly to the order and supported its military campaigns in the Holy Land. However, not all kings were so supportive of the Knights Templar. For example, King Philip IV of France saw the order as a threat to his power and sought to destroy it. In 1307, Philip ordered the arrest of all the Knights Templar in France, and he later pressured Pope Clement V into dissolving the order entirely. Eyewitness accounts of the Knights Templars' relationships with kings and rulers vary depending on the period and the specific context. For example, in the early days of the order, the Knights Templars were seen as valuable allies of the Crusader states, and they enjoyed the support of many kings and rulers in the region. However, as the order grew in power and influence, some rulers began to see it as a threat to their authority, and relations between the order and the ruling powers became more complex. The military prowess of the Knights Templar was a crucial part of their identity and legacy. As a military order, the Knights Templars were renowned for their skill and bravery in battle, and they played an essential role in many of the major conflicts of their time. According to historian Malcolm Barber, the Knights Templar were at the forefront of military technology and strategy in the 12th and 13th centuries. The order was known for its use of heavy cavalry, and its knights were trained in various weapons and tactics. They were also skilled in siege warfare and played a vital role in the capture of many important cities and fortresses. One of the most famous examples of the Knights Templars' military prowess was their role in the Battle of Montjuic in 1177. Historian Dan Jones states, "The Templars made a crucial contribution to the victory, using their heavy cavalry to devastating effect and helping to turn the tide of the battle." The order's success in this battle helped to establish its reputation as one of the most influential and effective military organizations of the time. In battle, eyewitness accounts of the Knights Templar often speak of their bravery and skill. For example, at the Siege of Acre in 1189, one chronicler described the Knights Templar as the flower of chivalry, the best and most courageous warriors of Christendom. Another chronicler noted that the order's knights fought like lions and died like martyrs. Despite their military prowess, however, the Knights Templars were not invincible. They suffered a significant defeat at the Battle of Hattin in 1187, where many of their knights were killed or captured. They also faced setbacks in their campaigns in Spain and Portugal, where the forces of the Reconquista eventually drove them out. The Knights Templars' military prowess was one of the critical factors that enabled them to play a significant role in the Crusades. As a military order, the Knights Templar were renowned for their skill and bravery in battle, and their heavy cavalry was a force to be reckoned with. This reputation for military excellence led to their involvement in many of the major battles and campaigns of the Crusades. From the capture of Jerusalem to the defense of Antioch, the Knights Templar played a key role in the history of the Crusades, and their legacy as a powerful and effective military order continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. As a military order, the Knights Templar were heavily involved in the Crusades, and they played a crucial role in many of the major battles and campaigns of the period. One of the most famous crusades involving the Knights Templar was the First Crusade, which began in 1096. According to historian Karen Rawls, the Knights Templar played a significant role in the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. The Order's knights were renowned for their bravery and skill in battle, and they played a vital role in the capture of many important cities and fortresses throughout the Crusades. However, the Knights Templars' involvement in the Crusades was not without controversy. Some historians have argued that the Order's focus on the Crusades contributed to its downfall. It became embroiled in political and military conflicts that weakened its position and made it vulnerable to attack. However, despite their military success and contributions to the Crusades, the Knights Templars' relationship with the French king, Philip IV, would ultimately lead to their downfall. At the beginning of their relationship, Philip IV saw the Knights Templar as a valuable ally and supporter. Historian Karen Rawls said, "Philip IV was a strong supporter of the Templars in the early days of his reign, and he relied on them for military and financial support. However, as time passed, Philip's relationship with the Knights Templar became more complicated. He began to see the order as threatening his power and authority. This was partly due to the wealth and influence the Knights Templar had accumulated over the years, giving them significant political and economic power. In 1307, Philip IV decided to take action against the Knights Templar. He ordered the arrest of all the Knights Templars in France, charging them with heresy, sodomy, and other crimes. The trial of the Knights Templar was conducted in secret, and many of the accused were tortured to extract confessions. Despite the lack of evidence against them, many of the Knights Templars were found guilty and sentenced to death. This injustice was noted by contemporary chroniclers who spoke out against the unfair treatment of the Knights Templar. One chronicler wrote, "The charges against the Templars were largely unfounded, but they provided Philip with a pretext for destroying an organization that he saw as a threat to his power." This sentiment was echoed by other historians, who noted the political motivations behind Philip's actions against the order. The investigation into the Knights Templar continued for several years, and the papacy eventually disbanded the order in 1312. The dissolution of the order was a controversial decision, and it sparked debate among historians and scholars for centuries. Some argued that the order was unjustly persecuted, while others saw it as a corrupt and dangerous organization that needed to be disbanded. Many historians see the downfall of the Knights Templar at the hands of Philip IV as an example of the dangers of political power and the delicate balance between military might and political influence. The execution of the Knights Templar was a brutal and gruesome event that marked the end of one of the most powerful and influential organizations in medieval Europe. After being arrested and subjected to a sham trial, many of the Knights Templars were sentenced to death, and their executions were carried out in various gruesome ways. According to historical accounts, many Knights Templar were burned at the stake, while others were tortured and punished. Some were publicly humiliated and forced to wear dunce caps, while others were paraded through the streets in chains before being put to death. One eyewitness to the execution of the Knights Templar was the chronicler Jean Froissart. In his chronicles, Froissart describes the execution of the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, in 1314. According to Froissart, de Molay was brought to a scaffold before Notre Dame Cathedral, where he was forced to confess to the charges against him before being burned at the stake. Froissart writes, "The Grand Master was brought before the people, and he was made to confess to his supposed crimes. He then recanted his confession and proclaimed his innocence, before being burned alive before the crowd." Other chroniclers of the time also recorded the executions of the Knights Templar, and their accounts paint a vivid picture of the brutality and horror of these events. Some described the screams and cries of the victims as they were burned alive, while others noted the crowds that gathered to watch the executions, including many who were horrified by what they saw. One of the most enduring myths surrounding the Knights Templar is the belief that they were somehow connected to Friday the 13th. According to popular legend, the downfall of the Knights Templar was linked to the events of Friday the 13th, 1307, when King Philip IV ordered the arrest of all the Knights Templar in France. While this legend is widely known, the connection between the Knights Templar and Friday the 13th is a matter of conjecture and speculation. The origin of the superstition surrounding Friday the 13th is challenging to trace, but it is believed to have its roots in medieval times. Historian Dan Jones states, "Friday was seen as an unlucky day in medieval Europe, and 13 was considered an unlucky number." This superstition was reinforced by events such as the arrest of the Knights Templar, which occurred on a Friday. Despite the lack of concrete evidence linking the Knights Templar to Friday the 13th, the superstition surrounding the date and its association with the order has persisted for centuries. Today, Friday the 13th is widely recognized as a day of bad luck, and its connection to the Knights Templar is often cited in popular culture and media. One of the most famous legends about the Knights Templar is the belief that they discovered the Holy Grail, the cup used by Jesus Christ at the Last Supper. This legend has been popularized in literature and popular culture, with numerous books and movies depicting the Knights Templar in search of the Holy Grail. While there is no historical evidence to support this claim, the legend persists, and it continues to capture the imagination of people worldwide. One of the earliest accounts of the Holy Grail comes from the medieval epic poem Percival, or the Story of the Grail, written by the French poet Cresson de Troyes in the late 12th century. In this tale, Percival, a knight of Arthurian legend, sets out in search of the Holy Grail and ultimately achieves spiritual enlightenment through his quest. Over the centuries, the legend of the Holy Grail has been associated with various mystical and spiritual beliefs. Some people believe that the cup possesses healing powers, while others believe it symbolizes spiritual enlightenment and transformation. The Ark of the Covenant is another legendary artifact associated with the Knights Templar. According to the Old Testament of the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was a sacred container that held the tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments that were given to Moses by God. The Ark was considered the most sacred object in the Jewish religion, and it was believed to possess immense power and protection. It was carried into battle as a symbol of the presence of God, and it was kept in the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Jerusalem. Over the centuries, many people have claimed to have discovered the Ark, and numerous legends are associated with its location and significance. According to some accounts, the Babylonians took the Ark from Jerusalem during their city conquest in 586 BC. Others suggest that the Jewish priests hid before the Babylonians arrived, and that the Knights Templar later discovered it during their time in Jerusalem. The legend of the Knights Templar and the Ark of the Covenant has been perpetuated in popular culture, with numerous movies and books depicting the knights on a quest to find the sacred artifact. However, there is little historical evidence to support this claim, and many scholars believe that the Knights Templar were not involved in the search for the Ark. Despite this, the legend of the Ark of the Covenant continues to captivate people worldwide. It remains one of the most enduring and fascinating myths associated with the Knights Templar. The Shroud of Turin is another artifact associated with the Knights Templar. According to legend, the shroud is the burial cloth used to wrap the body of Jesus Christ after his crucifixion. The shroud is believed to bear the image of Christ's face and body, and is considered one of the most sacred and mysterious artifacts in Christian history. The first recorded reference to the shroud comes from the 14th century, when it was discovered in a church in Liège, France. The shroud was later moved to Turin, Italy, where it has been kept for centuries. Despite its long history and widespread veneration, the authenticity of the shroud has been the subject of much debate and controversy. Some believe the Knights Templar to have been involved in the discovery and protection of the Shroud of Turin. According to some accounts, the Knights discovered the shroud during their time in Jerusalem and brought it back to Europe, where it was kept in secret. While there is little historical evidence to support this claim, the legend of the Knights Templar and the Shroud of Turin has endured over the centuries. The shroud remains one of the most mysterious and intriguing artifacts in Christian history, and it continues to inspire debate and speculation among scholars and researchers. Despite the uncertainty surrounding the shroud's origins and authenticity, it remains a powerful symbol of the Christian faith and has inspired countless people throughout history. Whether viewed as a sacred artifact or a mysterious and elusive object waiting to be discovered, the Shroud of Turin remains an enduring symbol of faith, mystery, and wonder. The Knights Templar has been a popular subject in pop culture for many years. The Knights have inspired countless artists and writers to create stories and characters based on order, from movies and television shows to books and video games. One of the most famous examples of the Knights Templar in pop culture is Dan Brown's best-selling novel, The Da Vinci Code. The book features a central plotline involving the Knights Templar and their supposed involvement in a conspiracy to cover up the true identity of Jesus Christ. The novel was later adapted into a blockbuster movie, further popularizing the Knights Templar in popular culture. The Knights have also been featured in a variety of movies and television shows, including Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, National Treasure, and Nightfall, a historical fiction series about the Knights Templar on the History Channel. The Knights are depicted as powerful and mysterious figures, guarding ancient artifacts and secret knowledge in these examples. In addition to their appearances in movies and TV shows, the Knights Templar has also been featured in various video games, including the popular Assassin's Creed series. In these games, players take on the role of a member of the Knights Templar, exploring historical locations and engaging in epic battles. While the portrayal of the Knights Templar in popular culture is often based on myth and legend rather than historical fact, their enduring popularity speaks to people's fascination with the order and its legacy. Today, the legacy of the Knights Templar lives on in many ways, including through their influence on Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a fraternal organization that traces its roots back to the Middle Ages, and it has been closely associated with the Knights Templar for many centuries. In modern times, the Knights Templar has been incorporated into the York Rite of Freemasonry hierarchy, a branch of the organization that focuses on Christian symbolism and mythology. Within the York Rite, the Knights Templar is considered a prestigious and elite organization, and membership is typically limited to those who have achieved the highest degrees of Freemasonry. The Knights Templar within Freemasonry continues to maintain the traditions and rituals of the original order, and they are dedicated to promoting the principles of chivalry, honor, and virtue. Their influence can be seen in the various symbols and emblems used within Freemasonry, such as the double-headed eagle and the Maltese cross, which were associated with the Knights Templar. While the Knights Templar within Freemasonry has no political or military power, they continue to be revered for their legacy of service and sacrifice. Today, the organization is focused on charitable works and community service, and it remains a source of inspiration and pride for its members. One Freemason who identifies as a Knights Templar is Stephen Dafoe, author of the book, The Templar Continuum, a new look at the Templars from a lost perspective. In an interview with the Epoch Times, Dafoe described the Knights Templar as a very positive and very high-minded organization that was trying to do a lot of good in the world. Another Freemason who identifies as a Knights Templar is Sir Knight R. Todd Harris, the Grand Commander of the Grand Commandery of Knights Templar of Texas. In an interview with the Masonic Roundtable podcast, Harris described the Knights Templar as a group of men who were trying to be better men, trying to live a better life, and trying to make the world a better place. In addition to their influence on Freemasonry, the Knights Templar continue to inspire people worldwide with their legacy of courage, honor, and dedication to service. From their role in the Crusades to their enduring legacy in popular culture, the Knights Templar remains an enduring symbol of bravery and courage. They continue to inspire people to strive for excellence and uphold the values of honor and integrity.